The Little Old Engine is the 14th book of the Railway series. Written by the Reverend Wilbert Awdry and illustrated by John T. Kenny, it was first published in 1959. 36 years later, 3 of the book's 4 short stories were adapted into 3 short episodes during Series 4 of Thomas and Friends. How faithful were these adaptations? Let's spot the differences. Little Old Engine was the second book to take place on the island of Sodor's narrow gauge railway. The first story begins by informing us that as Skarloey is away being mended, and Rheneas too, though he is not mentioned, the little line is being run by the keen Peter Sam, the arrogant Sir Handel, and a new engine, a diesel named Rusty, who, like the standard gauge-size diesel in the previous book, is black. In the television series, Rusty was painted orange, and his face is larger. The episode gives Rusty more screen time by adding an extra scene to the beginning and the end, where he encounters Harold.
Don't recall seeing you before. What brings you this way?
The Fat Controller sent me to help the other engines, huffed Rusty.
Well done. Cheers and keep up the good work.
Chicky chopper.
Rheneas and Duke break continuity by making cameos. Gordon tells Sir Handel that he can get out of work by pretending to be ill. The reason he does this is because Sir Handel moans to the big engine about the indignities of shunting. Sir Handel does not instigate this conversation in the episode, but from the look on his face, it's clear Gordon could tell he hated doing the job. This scene takes place at the engine's shed in the adaptation, but in the illustration, they're in the yards of the slate mine. Also, as always, the wink was not added.
I don't feel well,
He groaned.
And so Peter Sam takes Sir Handel's trucks to the quarry. The description and explanation of how the slate-filled trucks travel down a steep hill takes up a full page. Only half the text was used for the adaptation.
Slates come from quarries high up in the hills. They travel down in trucks on a steep railway called an incline.
Empty trucks at the bottom of the slope are hitched to a steel rope. Loaded ones at the top are hitched to another. By their weight, loaded trucks run down the steep slope, pulling the empty ones up.
There are strong brakes in the winding house at the top to prevent loaded trucks from running down too fast.
Peter Sam is neither pulling nor pushing trucks when he comes to a stop by the entrance to the incline. It is said, and shown in the book, that he has some trucks in front of him. It makes less sense that the trucks coming down the incline think that Peter Sam is Sir Handel, as the engines are different colours. The engines were painted red to match Skarloey and Rheneas in the Railway series, so the mix-up by the trucks who hate Sir Handel is understandable. Like most trucks in the TV series, the talking slate trucks were given faces. In the book, the trucks yell,
"Scrag him! Scrag him!"
which is outdated British slang for
I say we kill him!
The velocity of the crash pushes Peter Sam back a bit, but he remains in a fixed position in the adaptation. In the book, he seems to react more to being soaked by the smashed water column than being hit by the trucks full of slate.
Ouch! He shivered. I didn't expect a cold bath.
Presumably because in the book he had at least a few trucks in front of him to cushion the crash. As in the book's narration, it is said that Peter Sam's funnel was cracked, but the model also looks severely dented. Sir Handel and Peter Sam facing each other on opposite tracks was changed to them being side by side. Also, as with the 4 little engines, it is Sir Topham Hatt who is in charge of this narrow railway, not the thin controller.
Why didn't you warn me? I didn't think. You never do. You can start now, while you're doing Peter Sam's work as well as your own.
The episode starts with a repaired Skarloey meeting Rusty. This interaction is said but not seen in the original story. Furthermore, while both state the little diesel helped the little old engine off the transport truck, no crane that would be needed to do the job was shown in the adaptation. 2 pages worth of Peter Sam telling Skarloey about the railway's new coaches and guards van were not added to the adaptation, instead skipping ahead to the introduction of Duncan.
Who is Duncan? He came as a spare engine after my accident. Is he useful? He'll pull anything, and I'm sure he means well, but he's bouncy and rude.
The gruff new engine's colour was changed from red to a golden yellow. It is strongly implied by Peter Sam that due to previously working in a factory, Duncan has a habit of swearing. This is not mentioned in the adaptation, and the first we see of him, his facial expression is happy, the opposite of how he looks in the illustration.
Duncan has done it again. He's stuck in a tunnel. Come on, old boy. We'll have to get him out.
The concept that this is not the first time something like this has happened to Duncan was added to the episode.
Come on, old boy, they said. Duncan is stuck in the tunnel, and we'll have to get him out.
Off to rescue the new engine, Skarloey is pulling 3 trucks full of tools and workmen, and a guards van. In the illustration, the old engine is going backwards and only pulling 1 truck of tools, while the workmen are riding in the van, who was given a name in the book. Duncan is covered in rocks, stones and bricks from the collapsed tunnel, and his crew and a few passengers are standing around him. In Kenny's illustration, the only loose rocks seen are a few on top of his cab and a few more being carried away by helpful passengers.
I am a plain blunt engine. I speak as I find. Tunnels to be tunnels and not rabbit holes. This railway is no good at all.
For the return journey, the engine's positions differ once again. Rather than Duncan facing his coaches with Skarloey pulling him, Duncan is facing forwards and the old engine is pushing the train. The thin controller's warning to Duncan was expanded by the fat controller, including referring to the new engine as a wannabe pop star and the pun.
There is nothing wrong with that tunnel. You stuck because you tried to do rock and roll.
Tunnels are not dance floors, and you are not a pop star.
If it happens again, I'll cut down your cab. And your funnel, too.
In other words, your career is on the line. Need I say more?
Skarloey tells Rusty that so much work has been done to repair faults with the line that it feels like he's running on a completely different railway. Rusty replies with something their manager said.
Let's mend the track so well that he doesn't know where he is. And we did. And you didn't, if you take my meaning.
In the book, this quote was said to be said by the workman's foreman, Mr. Hugh. The conversation continues at the engine's shed, with Skarloey and Rusty facing each other, while Duncan overhears them as he is on the other side of the shed window. This was changed to Croven Gate Station, and we are given a demonstration of Duncan's ability to rock and roll.
Ha!
Grunted Duncan.
I know my way about. I don't need smelly diesels to tell me what to do.
Duncan collects his coaches and returns to the station to take passengers from James's train. This scene takes place the next morning in the original story. This changes the book's suggestion that Rusty did not bring Duncan his coaches out of spite because he insulted the diesel. In the episode, Rusty seemed to be working another job, so did not have time to help the surly engine.
You poor engine.
Sympathised James.
I know all about diesels. One crept into our yard and ordered us about. I soon sent him packing.
Duncan rocking himself off the rails looks more dramatic in the episode than it does in the illustration, as his right wheel has practically crossed onto the other side of the track. whereas in the book it appears that only his front wheel has slipped off the rail. The illustration shows us the inner workings of Rusty as Mr. Hugh tries to start him up so they can go to rescue Duncan. The little diesel is not opened up in the episode. The narration in the adaptation adds that the passengers were not pleased about having to help lift an entire engine back onto the rails.
I'm sorry I was rude. That's all right. I wish all diesels were like you. Let's be friends. Suits me.
The book's fourth and final story, Little Old Twins, was rejected by Thomas and Friends' producers. In it, a television crew comes to film the narrow gauge railway, and ends with the author's shout-out to the real Talaclyn Railway in Wales, where the engines that inspired these stories live and are still working today.